welcome to our presentation about Arce immigration law on some options for immigration to the USA. We want it to be interactive, so if you guys have any questions, please, you can chat them and we'll respond. Also, if you turn on your CC, you can listen or look at the presentation in any language you choose. So my name is Carmen Arce. I'm an immigration attorney here in the US. I've been practicing immigration law for over 20 years. We focus primarily in cases for professionals and business immigration from all over the world. And so today my partner Giorgio, Polacco, and I will be talking to you about some options that may, interest you in living, working, moving to the US. I'll allow Giorgio to also introduce himself, and then we'll start talking about some of the better visa options for professionals from other countries.
Hi everyone, I'm Giorgio Polacco. I'm partner at Arce Immigration. I've been working with Carmen now for 7 years. I'm in charge of managing our global team. We have offices in US and Europe, and over 35 members of our team are among the US, Europe, and also in Brazil. We specialize in immigration visas for individuals, companies, and also family that are willing to move to the US.
So when you're looking at immigration, you have to divide all cases into temporary cases, which are called non-immigrant visas, and permanent cases, which are called permanent residencies or immigrant visa options. So we're going to start talking regarding two of the, I would say, best options for non-immigrant temporary visas that are rather quick options to be able to come to the US. So the most used visa for this is the F1 student visa. So a lot of our clients, they have degrees in their home country, but they either want to do a postgraduate here or a different area of study here. And so for those immigrants, they simply start looking at university or college or institution options here in the US that will accept them and issue them the I-20. They then would take that document to their US embassy or consulate and come into the US as a foreign student. However, I will say that that option can be rather expensive. Studying in the US is quite a bit of money as a foreign student. So, but there are sometimes some scholarship options and other options where, because of a person's degree, they may be recruited or they may qualify for a J visa, where universities bring them in on an exchange program. So that's a good option that a lot of our clients start with. They start with the student visa and they use it as a stepping stone to later on be able to have a US degree, get a US job, and get a US employer to sponsor them for a work visa. So go ahead.
I want to add something that, of course, depending on the course of study, there might be some benefits to the students that might go beyond the course study itself. For example, if instead of just doing an English course in the US, but someone wants to proceed with an advanced education in the US, maybe starting a bachelor degree in the US or a master degree in the US, that would open the door for some temporary work permits options that might be allowed during the course of study or after the course of study. So that could be a benefit because, of course, the student will have the opportunity to start looking for a job and creating those relationships that might be beneficial for a future sponsorship of another type of visa in the US.
Yes. And so anytime a foreign person is looking at studying in the US, they should look closely at the opportunities that are involved with that specific program through that specific institution. Because there are ways through the student visa to be able to work. But they definitely have to look and talk to their program director, look at the school, ask at the school they're looking at how they could possibly work in the US, because there's concurrent work, there's post-study work called OPT, there's CPT, there's a hardship work permit. So there are, and you can always work on campus. So there are actually 4 ways that you can be here on a student visa and be able to work. Because there is this common knowledge, and it's kind of a misunderstanding sometimes, that students can never work. The general rule is that they're here to study, they're not here to work, but there are those 4 exceptions. So there are ways that foreign students can work while they're here on an F1 visa.
And of course, just to add something, is not only allows the principal applicant, so the main applicant, to come to the US study, but if he's married and if he has family, he can bring with him the family members under the F2 visa.
Good point, good point. And that's true. And if they have F2 children, the children can go to public school, which is free. So a lot of people believe that those children have to go to private school. No. So that can be a big benefit as well. So that's one of the non-immigrant options that a lot of our clients start out with as a way of getting, a step in or a door open to the US. But another visa that has recently been made more available to student professionals is the O1 visa for talent or extraordinary ability. And I'm going to let Giorgio talk a little bit about O visas and who qualifies and how we handle them.
So first of all, the O1 visa is a temporary visa. Allows a person to come to the US for a specific amount of time, which is generally up to 3 years, renewable, to work in the US for a specific employer. That can be or a US, there has to be a US entity, but it can be a US employer or an agent. Now, our practice for the O1 visa extends to several types of professionals. It goes into the arts field, it goes into professional that are more STEM, so it can be physics, mathematics, chemistry, or it can be related to sports. So achievements within the sports. What they have in common, all these professions, is that the person in this case must demonstrate a specific level, a high level of expertise, which is called extraordinary abilities in this case. Now, the term extraordinary ability might be scary because, of course, someone say, okay, what does it mean? That's just a name. There are very specific requirements that have to be demonstrated. There is a list of 8 specific requirements. We have to satisfy only 3 of them. So the important thing is that there are 2 main groups of O1 for talents. We call it talents visa. Why? Because of course it's for people with we say extraordinary talent. The first category is of course for the people with expertise in business, in arts, or within the sports. And the second group, it's for people with a special ability within the arts or in motion picture. Motion picture, so it's related to television or movie theaters. They're very similar requirements, very similar criteria. We're not gonna go over every single criteria, but we're gonna just mention what are the main requirements that we generally apply to applicants that decide to go within this specific category. The first one and the most common is receiving awards within the specific field. So of course, people within the sports industry, and it's sometimes easy. Why? Because it's part of the industry itself to prove with awards, but that's not the only thing. Why? Because participating in competition is technically possible for everything. People just have to have the right information. For example, we have common example of things that sometimes are not like within like a soccer player, where you have to prove that you won a competition, or like an athlete within the mixed martial arts that has to win a fight. For example, a mechanic, right, Carmen? We recently had a client which had an extraordinary talent in car repairs, which is a form of art. Why? Because there is a lot of like skills required, the technical skills requires to create this form of art on cars are considered form of arts. They have specific exhibitions, international tournaments, juries that are evaluating their work. So it can really be applied to a different type of profession. So winning awards is, of course, one of the main requirements, but it's not the only one. Also being part of an association that requires they call it outstanding achievement of its members. It means that to be part of that specific association is not just like through a payment form. Sometimes you have to prove a higher level of membership within the same associations. Of course, not every single field has a specific association that someone can easily join, but it's part of even the creative process behind the preparation of the case. Creating an immigration case is not like a mechanic thing. It requires a lot of creative process, sometimes even to build up the client's profile. Why? Because these criteria that now we are analyze are subjective criteria that have a high margin of discretionality, and is the attorney in this case that must create the specific connection between the criteria and the client's profile. So behind this criteria of the membership, of course, we have to consider the criteria of the critical role in specific organization. Having a critical role, sometimes it's one of the most common criteria to prove. Why? Because sometimes even the participation in a specific job or a specific project that might have a specific influence within even the company itself might demonstrate some sort of critical role that can be demonstrated through even some support letters of testimonial letters from other experts that might certify the participation in that specific process. So this is one of the one of the
common
most
criteria.
Even judging the work of others is another common criteria that we have to satisfy. Of course, in the sport field, again, we see this the possibility to be the referee of a specific competition, like generally a BJJ athlete or a mixed martial art athlete is not only an athlete himself, but he can be also an official referee for other competitions. So these are the type of connection. But again, it can be something different. A chef that can not only participate in a cooking competition, but can also be a judge in a cooking competition, or sometimes even a mentorship program. I am mentoring some young students that are following a specific professional path. I'm evaluating their work, and they can certifying this process of membership, of mentorship. This is how we try to demonstrate these criteria. There are other criteria that are...
Yeah, I think that, I mean, those are some common ones, but I think the important thing to understand is that when we talk to someone and we know that they are very, very good at what they do, no matter what they do. Giorgio gave some good examples, everything from a mechanic to a chef, to an athlete, to an artist, to a scientist. Anyone who is really well known in their field, they can potentially qualify for the O visa for extraordinary ability. And our job as your lawyers is to look at what you've done with your career and figure out which criteria we can match your accolades to, and then present that to immigration. It is a subjective case. We're trying to show that you're extraordinary. And there are some criteria that the government gives us of things they're looking for, that they believe if the person has at least 3 of those, then that's a pretty good sign that they are extraordinary in their area. But another important point that we get a lot of and a lot of confusion regarding these O visas for talent is who are they going to work for? So a lot of our clients work for themselves. They either have already owned a business in their home country, or they want to own a business in the US, or they say, you know, what I do is freelance. I'm not going to have a regular employer. So then we help them understand how to establish a US company, how to set it up so that company can be their sponsor. Because we all know that when you're not in the US, it can be difficult to find an employer who's willing and ready to sponsor you without already knowing you. So that's like the O1 in a very small little capsule. But when we do talk to clients one-on-one and we do a consultation with them, of course, we have the time to go into depth on any of these options. So Giorgio, I know you explained that the O1 is temporary. Then it has its sister visa, the EB1, which is permanent.
Exactly.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that and about how the immigrant can always choose to start with the temporary, or he can go right to the permanent.
Exactly.
And how they can transition from one to the other. So would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this is very interesting because although there is not a direct bridge between the temporary visa, the O1 visa, extraordinary ability, and then a green card, the government had the bright idea, because the US government is smart. At the end of the day, what they want the best of the best. So they say, if you really can demonstrate that you have extraordinary ability, we give you the option to come here on a temporary base. But if you decide to be here permanently, well, you can apply for the EB1. Well, the EB1...
And I just want to add, sorry to interrupt you, this is how Einstein got his permanent residency. And so a lot of people will say, oh, it's the Einstein visa. So it was through extraordinary ability. So continue.
So the EB1 has exactly, I would say, very similar criteria to the O1, and this is why it's a very good connection. Of course, there is a huge difference. One is temporary, the other one is a permanent residency, which means that after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. So it's a huge benefit. So in terms of revision of the case, the officer will have a higher standard of review compared to the O1. Why? Because the benefit, of course, is higher. But
that's a good point. And so I want to add that when we know someone has a talent, but if they're very young in their career, we're going to usually advise them to start with the O1, come to the US, get some experience here, and then go to the permanent. And I do want to mention that we also have worked with a lot of tattoo artists, and that's a good example of, it might be a very young, very talented tattoo artist, for example. And so we're like, you know, at this stage, you are really good, but you don't have a lot of career. You've only been really professionally working for a few years. We're probably going to advise to start with the O, come to the US, continue to get all of that recognition, and then go for the permanent.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, as for the requirements, we say there are basically very similar, very similar. So the goal, as Carmen mentioned, sometimes it's to start with the O1, use that permit to work in the US, improve your profile. At that point, you already know that one of the requirements is to have publications, so published articles about yourself. You will use the time to work on your profile, to try to get these publications that you can use to then apply for your green card. And so this is one of the options, of course, very briefly, but the main point for the EB1, and this is, I think, one of the most critical point, is that it doesn't require a sponsor. So the O1 visa is a sponsor visa, so you need a US sponsor. As Carmen mentioned, you can also decide to establish your own company and sponsor yourself through your own company. Just as a additional point, there is a misconception of, oh my God, I'm going to create my own company. Well, in the US, I'm a foreigner. I'm from Italy. If you want to open a company in Italy, it's very difficult. There's a lot of bureaucracy. If you want to open a company in the US, it could take technically 10 minutes, and it's very cheap compared to what you can think. That's something that you could consider, but at the same time, for EB1, you do not need a sponsor. You need to demonstrate that you will work in your field of expertise, but on paper, you do not need a sponsor as for the O1, and that's
Yeah,
one of the
with the
main.
EB1, it can be a statement, a sworn statement saying, I plan to, upon coming to the US as a permanent resident, I will definitely continue my career. I'm hoping to go to Michigan, where I'm going to teach at the University of Michigan. For example, that's just an example. But I want to go over real quick and just kind of show you again the difference between the O, which is temporary, and the EB1, which is permanent. Because remember, they're both talent-based. They're both very similar, almost identical, like Giorgio said, in their criteria. So when would we suggest to go straight to the EB1? Well, if it's a family and they have a child turning 21 soon, we're going to say, don't waste your time with O1, go straight to EB1. And again, you know that if it's a family and they have a 20-year-old child, that person's going to have a long career already. So it's not going to be someone really young. Also, a lot of my clients will say, well, if I start with the O1, I'm going to have to pay for 2 processes in the end, which is true. So some of them will say, I'm in the Middle East, or I'm in Europe, or I'm in South America. I'm going to stay here, and I would rather spend my money and do my investment for the permanent option. And then I'll just move to the US when it's approved. And then they want to know how long, what's the time difference? So start to finish on an O, doing it on the fast end, you could be moving to the US in about 6 months. Start to finish on an EB1, and even on looking at like a fast timeline, you will not be in the US until probably at least a year and a half. Year to year and a half, the fastest way you can do it. So that's just a little bit of an example of some differences.
Absolutely. And if I can add something, in both cases, you have the option to apply either consular process, so waiting in your country, or if you have a tourist visa in your passport, you can travel to the US entering with your US visa and then decide to secure your new application in the United States. So you will be allowed to remain in the US while the case is pending. There are different type of timeline also in this case, which one part goes for the preparation of the case and one part goes for the reviewing of the case from the immigration authorities.
Yes. And a lot of our clients come to us, or consultations, new clients, and they say, oh, I heard about, a talent visa. And so there are several different ones, really. There's the O and the EB1 we just mentioned. Then there's what's called the EB2, exceptional ability, national interest waiver, advanced degree. So when we're looking at a possible, case type, a lot of people could qualify for all 3 of these options and even more. So we kind of explain to them, okay, this is, you really look more like an O1 to us, this is why. I will say that a lot of people come to me and say, I want the engineer visa. So when they say that, I know they're talking about the EB2 national interest waiver. And why do they call it the engineer visa? Because it has 11 precedent setting case types that are in the only immigration law source book, and engineer is one of those. But business owners also there. And anything that's STEM, again, is great for this area of national interest. And STEM, to define it, is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But those are only 4 areas of interest. There are many areas of interest. For example, anything in the healthcare industry. And so when we look at a person's profile, one of the most important things is to give us a really good resume. In reviewing a resume, we can already usually tell someone their options, and then we can walk them through that specific case type. So I'll let Giorgio talk a little bit more about EB2s and how they differ between the advanced degree, between the exceptional ability,
Sure.
and what the national interest waiver really means.
Okay, I would start exactly on that. And I want to start with what the US government want to try to do. The goal of the US government is to protect US workers. They want to make sure that US workers have enough job against the competition from foreign workers. So they say, okay, if there is a US company that wants to hire someone from abroad, they have to go through a specific process that it's called labor certification. So this process, in short, demonstrate that the employer is opening for that position. There are not US workers that wants to apply for that specific position, and because of that he can bring in someone from the outside, someone from abroad. So this is the goal of the government, to protect US workers. So they say, okay, now we demonstrate that there are no US workers willing to apply for that specific position, or they do not have the skills necessary to cover that specific position, then you can hire. However, there is a catch. The problem is it requires a lot of time to go through this administrative process. So the US government says, okay, that's the normal route. However, if a specific applicant can demonstrate that his work has a national impact, a national implication on the US government, they can waive the labor certification process. So it's a very smart move from the government, because they say, hey, on one hand, we are protecting US workers. However, if your job, the job you're gonna do in the US, has national implications, well, then you can waive that long process. You don't even need a sponsor to apply for that specific visa. So it's a huge type of case. But they say, hey, most important thing, you have a preliminary requirements, okay? You have to have a high level of education. That's why for this type of case, the US government requires you to have a bachelor degree plus 5 years of full-time progressive experience in a specific field, or a master degree. So that's a very important thing, because that's a requirement, but it's very objective. You just have to, there is no discretion on that. If you have a high level of education, you can then start demonstrating why your job it's supported to, we have to waive the labor certification because of the importance of that job. So that's a very important thing. Why? Because as long as you have a bachelor degree plus 5 years of experience, or a master degree, that's already ring a bell and say, hey, do I qualify for an EB2 national interest waiver? And that's a very important thing. However, again, there is an exception. In case that you don't have a high level of education, US government still say, hey, if you prove that you have exceptional abilities, to not be confused with the extraordinary ability of the O1 and the EB1, so and are similar but different requirements in this case, then you can then demonstrate that your job will have national implications. So the requirements is not going to be a high level of education, is it will shift on a subjective evaluation of your exceptional abilities, which are very strict requirements, but sometimes are also let's say easy to prove. Why? Because are, like, for example, demonstrating 10 years of experience, high salary, membership, recognition within the field. But there is then a final merit determination that say it's still on the officer discretion to say yes, you have this exceptional ability. So it's slightly difficult than the very objective criteria of the master degree. However, once we know through a preliminary consultation with you if you qualify for the advanced degree or the exceptional ability, then we can start talking about the national interest waiver. So the importance of your job and the connections between your job and this broad implication. And here I will leave Carmen to go ahead with the description of this very creative but important criteria.
The national importance?
Yes, like about the proposed endeavor, how
the proposed endeavor.
Yes.
Yeah. So when we talk to a client, we always ask them, like, what is your proposal in the US? What do you want to do here? And sometimes we'll have clients like a chemical engineer who has the degree, master's in chemical engineering, but they'll tell us, I'm going to work with volleyball because I also play volleyball, so I'm not actually going to work in chemical engineering. Well, then that person does not have an EB2 national interest waiver with an advanced degree, although they have the advanced degree. But their proposed endeavor means what they propose they're going to do in the US for work. And so anytime a client tells us, yes, I have this degree, but I'm not going to work in that field, then I explain that's not a match. In order to really win your case, you have to prove you have the degree or the experience and you're going to work in that field. And if you don't, then we're not going to win on the proposed endeavor and proving the national importance. And so it is very creative, like Giorgio said, in the sense that it's creative legal arguments, creative legal writing. And what we do is really try to talk to each client and understand what their goals are here in the US. I ask them, what's your dream job? You tell me that, and I'll tell you if I think it qualifies and if we have a good case. And I do want to say a lot of people, they could go either way. They could go EB1, extraordinary ability, or EB2, whether it's EB2 advanced degree or EB2 exceptional ability. And when they're trying to understand the difference, what I tell them is that if you're looking at the extraordinary ability case, it's all about the person. It's about Giorgio, right? When you're looking at EB2 national interest waiver, it's all about the work, the area of work Giorgio works in. It's not about Giorgio, really. It's just, does he qualify? Yes, because he has the degree. But what's so interesting about his work? How's that going to benefit the US? And if it's all about his field, then that's going to be more of an EB2 national interest waiver case rather than an extraordinary ability case, which is very individual about the person, the accolades the person has, how well known that person is in their field. And when I tell clients that, they usually can pretty quickly decide or determine which case type is better for them.
So, and exactly, and I would now, just to simplify things, I would also say, okay, so what are the most common type of professions that we connect within the EB2 national interest waiver? Well, I would start with the engineering part, I would say every type of engineering professional spanning from petroleum industry, construction industry, process engineering, industrial engineering, supply chain and logistics, uh, I
I
would
mean,
say
chemical engineering, every.
computer engineering as well.
I mean,
IT, huge IT, of course, right now has a huge impact, of course. And now, just by naming this profession, you can already start connecting.
and then
Okay,
anyone in the finance sector, it's another named area, health sector. So every time we look at a client's profile, we're looking at education and experience. And in just a minute, Giorgio and I are both going to go through some very interesting case types that kind of are creative, and we really had to think outside the box to decide how to define this person. And one of the cases I want to talk about that Giorgio and I did work on, the person was here in the US with an investor visa, small pizzeria, but they have the E2, which is a temporary visa. They really need a green card because their daughters are turning 21. So what do? We argued exceptional ability in business. And we won straight approval. Was it easy? No, but that was their only option. They didn't have another way to get a green card. And the person had no formal education, but had some pretty good experience as a business owner. So business owner, when we see business owner, we're automatically going to be looking at alternatives, which one of them is going to be the EB2, but another one's going to be the EB1, multinational executive, maybe even extraordinary ability. So like Giorgio said, when we see those keywords like engineer, teacher, IT, finance, health sector, business owner, we're obviously going to talk to them a little bit at least about the EB2 national interest waiver and explain to them that black and white, they qualify, they're eligible, but it is a subjective case type too, that we have to try to convince the officer that our client deserves this specific benefit. So I wanted to share the case of Salvatore, which is the pizza lovers owner, and the EB2 national interest waiver in business that we did. And now, Giorgio, pick one of your favorite case types.
one of my favorite, I
A
would
specific
say,
case example, a specific.
yeah, one of the case that I love the most, not only for the type of case, but also for the condition of the person. It was let's say it was a long battle for this case. We were fighting hard. The officers required additional documents, and she was very exhausted. Why? Because it was during the COVID. So imagine even the timeline was different. Processing time were very long, and she was about to give up. And I say, no, I think you really have to keep fighting. And she was an IT development specialist, and she created an app that was used in the healthcare industry for create automatic reminders to take pills or specific medication. So it was a very innovative project. I had to study the project with her, was very interesting. And even in terms of efforts, for sure, she put a lot of efforts in it, but financially was not a very financially hard process for her. Why? Because it was just her skills. She created everything from scratch, and it was very nice to see the creations of something that goes into very detailed field, and I liked it because of the purpose and the benefits that this project was creating.
I mean, there's so many different people that we've touched over the many years, and you change people's lives. It's really a special job what we do. And so when I think back at some of my favorite cases over more than 2 decades, one thing Giorgio mentioned that really resonates with me is that the cases sometimes that are actually harder to win, they can be so much more rewarding when you do win them. And you're like, I knew it. I knew that you had, this special talent, or, that you worked in an area that's really important and we need more of. It's just very rewarding to know that you're able to change that person's life and of his whole family or her whole family. So,
Yeah.
so there have been so many interesting ones. We also have had the opportunity to help a lot of people in the veterinary sciences area. Psychology is another area that we've helped a lot of professionals in psychology come here. One of my favorite cases was a lady who has an extraordinary ability in anti-trafficking of humans. And actually, I misspoke. She has an advanced degree. So we did EB2 national interest waiver. Her name is Anna. And when I first talked to her, she was a psychologist, but she used her psychology degree to work with victims of human trafficking and really to do campaigns anti-human trafficking. And so I really believed in the case. And I knew that what she was doing is so important, and that we're just now, this problem is surfacing worldwide. And so that was a very rewarding case to work on. So Giorgio, give us another one of your favorites.
I was just thinking about that, and I'm still debating which one I should go with, because on one hand, I have one of my favorite type of case. Why? Because this case was very technical and was a long battle again. It was a doctor, a dentist, and this case was very difficult because of the technicalities of the case. He was an expert in some sort of revolutionary bone transplant and bone regenerative transplant. So innovative techniques from Brazil that is not really used in the US, and he was part of this team in a university. It was actually he has a protocol with his name. We decided it was nothing that he said. I have this protocol. Say, did you name this protocol? Say no. Say, well, give it your name. So he went to the university. He gave the protocol that name. So it was his name protocol, and it was published on the university. Nevertheless, it was such a long battle with the government to make it approved, and after a long battle, we finally won it, and it was a very like say happy ending, but was worth it. On the other hand, I was talking about a case that, because sometimes we're just making great examples, but at the end of the day, I also remember that I won cases that sometimes I even doubted myself, and the case was approved. Carmen sometimes says, "Oh, that's miracle," but yeah, it's a miracle, but it's just because of the work that we put behind the preparation of the case. It goes really, really beyond what anyone could do. Why? Because we try to bond with the client. We try to create real evidentiary documents that can be used for the case. And that was a case with an hairdresser, which is a very simple profession, but at the end of the day, it was approved under the EB2 national interest waiver. So we provided a specific description of the cultural enrichment of this hair-specific hairstyling technique used for women even that were undergoing to specific medical treatment. It was a very, very difficult case, but it worked. So that's what sometimes makes us proud of our work, because even the clients was also in this case kind of giving up, and we say no, we just have to really keep fighting, and that's what happened. So
yeah. Super interesting. I think we're down to our last 10 minutes. So I think if there's any questions, perfect questions and answers. Are there any pending questions right now? Would anyone like to ask a question? No?
I would use this time to ask you a question, Carmen. So if you have a piece of advice for the people here that are watching this webinar, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that immigrating to the US is possible. Because I know so many of our clients, after they win their case, they come back and say, you know, I really had this dream, but everyone told me, and I even thought it was impossible. And so I would say it's possible. Believe in your dream, talk to a professional, and it, you know, if there's an opportunity here in the US for someone, I would say absolutely start looking into options of how to get here. And so I would just say that nothing's impossible. And if they have that desire and the person's a professional, then there are options available to them. And so many clients of mine have told me, you know, everyone laughed at me. No one thought I would be able to come to the US doing what I do. And here I am. And I have my permanent residency. And so that would be my one advice. You believe in yourself, look at the options, do your research. It is possible. It takes work. And Giorgio, you know, we work very closely with our clients. We work closely to present their resume in the best professional way, to present their proposed endeavor or their future benefit to the US in the best possible way, to really talk to them one-on-one about our experience and what we've seen through examples of other clients. So that would be my main advice. What about you, Giorgio? What would be your main advice to someone considering, you know, moving to the US?
I agree with you that the most important thing is to do your own research, but sometimes it's extremely important to use professional advice. That's the most important thing that I can tell. As an immigrant myself, I had to go through this process, and having a professional guidance was the most important thing, because there is nothing sure for an immigration process. Do not trust anyone that say it's guaranteed, or like nothing is guaranteed.
Nothing is guaranteed with the government.
Everything is discretional, and that's why having the right professional at your side, it's crucial.
Yes, I do want to talk about, you know, one of my favorite cases that you handled, Giorgio, was someone you knew personally who had been denied his work visa, or maybe it was even his tourist visa, really kind of on a discrimination type basis because of his tattoos and because of whether or not, you know, what he was doing in the US. And then working with him for years to basically, you know, convince him that you can do this. Let's go back and let's apply and get the temporary visa for talent. So I want you to talk about that a little bit, about that case, that when you know someone personally, they've already had a denial, and getting them into the US, how rewarding that is, and what that meant to you.
Absolutely. I think that's the reason why I decided to do this work, this job. The most rewarding thing is to see how you can change life of a person that had already given up. You say, no, I'm done, I don't want to do anything, and say it's a waste of potential. Why? Because of course, coming from a specific country where you know that you don't get what you deserve, while on the other hand you go to the US, which is the land of dream. That's where if you are good at something, you can be rewarded for what you really deserve, and that's why it was hard, the psychological process behind like pushing the clients behind these limits, behind these fears, because that's people get scared after a denial, after getting denied access to the US. You getting bounced, and they say, no, you're not gonna get to the US until you apply for next visa. Now you go back to your country, and this is your next flight. So they just say, oh my God, I was like about to go there and I basically got deported. What's going on here? And you say, okay, this is not going to happen anymore. But at the end of the day, creating that connection with the client, that of course was personal, but was beyond that. It was the personal part was easy. The professional part was hard. That's the most critical. But then it turned out to be a winning case, and we overcome the fears, and we got the visa approved.
Yes. I mean, like you said, there's no guarantees with immigration. But the one thing we always try to explain is that we do guarantee the quality of our work and that we're not going to give up. And so we're used to fighting the government and to representing our client and to, bringing them here or keeping them here. And so, that's what we do every day. And there's not one single case type that works for everybody. Every single family or person is different. It depends on their goals, their experience, and their education. And so we really look at everything and explain it before we start a case. There are many people that come to us and we'll tell them, right now you don't have a case. You need to first get your master's. You need more work experience. You need some more recognition in your field. And so, I feel like the most important thing is to find a law firm that's going to be ethical and honest and on your side. It's not just about, filing the case. It's really trying to give you the best possible chance for winning. That's our goal, is to win your case. And so, we really take our time at the consultation stage to try to get the whole diagnosis and to lay out a plan for the future. And not just plan A. We usually try to have a plan B. We explain best case scenario, worst case scenario, what would happen if it does get denied. Where do we go from there? And so we understand it's a big investment, not just financial, it's also your time, your energy, your hopes. It's a lot that goes into the decision to immigrate. We know that. And there's a lot of work we'll do together throughout that whole stage. And we're not talking about months. We're talking about relationships, client-attorney relationships that last years, many times, because once you get the first visa, then you may go to permanent residency. Then 5 years later, citizenship. Then we're helping your family. So we have so many recurring clients that we've known for years and years. Like Giorgio said, it's extremely rewarding what we do. We know we're changing people's lives. We know we're helping people accomplish their dreams. And we know that it's generational. It's not even just the person here today. It goes on. It's their children, their grandchildren. And so we're here to help you. Arce Immigration Law, arceglobal.com. We look forward to doing more of these webinars. So if you have anyone that's interested, let them know. And I think if we don't have more, we're going to close the session. I think we're just about out of time. Giorgio, do you want to close with any words?
Well, I hope we covered enough let's say category, and we went over a lot of different type of aspect of immigration law. It was very interesting, and I hope everyone enjoyed. And
one more really important point, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Giorgio. What we are doing, and we've always kind of done this for certain countries or certain professions, anyone coming from a war-torn country, a country in major crisis, we are giving right off the top. We work with flat fees on all our cases, and we're giving discounts because we know that it's just going to be harder. There's going to be more involved, and it may not have the same opportunity as other clients. And it's not that it's case by case, it's across the board. Anyone from certain countries that are going through crisis or war, conflict, they're getting right off the bat thousands of dollars off their case. So thank you all for participating. Hopefully next time we'll have more people participate. And we just want to, education and knowledge is power. So we're just trying to share the information.
And of course, if you want to schedule a private consultation with us, just send us an email and we'll make sure, tell us that you were part of this webinar, and we will make sure to schedule a private consultation with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.